Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Battle of Midway, the Naval Institute Guide to the U.S. Navy's Greatest Victory. Edited by Thomas C. Hone. Narrated by Paul Boehmer. Publisher's Note: in this audio edition, you will hear references to illustrations, charts, and tables present in the print and e-book formats of this book. Help for listeners: the different chronologies of the opposing forces. Japanese and American timekeeping differed during the battle, which can confuse listeners. The Battle of Midway was fought across the international date line. The Japanese used east longitude dates and Tokyo time. The Americans used west longitude dates, and there was a 2-hour difference between Midway clocks and the clocks in TF-16 and TF-17. The carriers were 2 hours ahead of Midway. This can be very confusing. The point to keep in mind is that 0130 for the Japanese was 0430 for the American defenders of Midway the previous day. What was often the 4th of June time for the Americans was the 5th of June time for the Japanese. To simplify matters for listeners, here is a brief chronology of events on the 4th to the 6th of June in Midway time. 4th of June, 1942, 0130 hours. Midway-based PBY seaplanes begin attack on Japanese transports. 0405 hours. Midway-based B-17s depart Midway to attack Japanese transports. 0430 hours. Planes from the Kido Butai launched to attack Midway. 0430 hours. Yorktown sends 10 SBD scouts to search for Japanese carrier force. 0437 hours. Dawn. 0552 hours. PBY reports sighting Japanese carriers. 0603 hours. PBY's sighting received on the Enterprise. 0630 hours. Marine anti-aircraft guns open fire on Japanese planes attacking Midway. 0700 to 0705 hours. The Hornet and Enterprise launch strike aircraft. 0705 hours. Leader of the Japanese aircraft attacking Midway signals need for second strike. 0708 hours. Midway-based attack aircraft begin attacks on the Kido Butai. 0820 hours. Scout plane from the Japanese cruiser Tone signals that U.S. information includes a carrier. 0838 hours. The Yorktown launches a strike. 0918 hours. The Hornet torpedo planes begin attack. 1020 hours. American dive bombers begin their attacks on the Kaga, Akagi, and Soryu. 1054 hours. The Hiyu launches a strike against U.S. carriers. 1200 hours. The Hiyu planes attack the Yorktown. 1320 hours. The Hiyu's second strike of attack planes sets off to attack U.S. carriers. 1445 hours. SDB from the Yorktown locates the Hiyu. 1700 hours. Planes from U.S. carriers attack the Hiyu. The 5th of June. 0020 hours. Admiral Yamamoto cancels cruiser attack on Midway. 0255 hours. Admiral Yamamoto cancels Midway invasion. 0300 hours. Approximately. The Mogami and the Mikuma collide. The 6th of June. 0945 hours. Approximately. The Hornet aircraft attack the two cruisers. The Enterprise planes attack at 1230 hours. 1331 hours. The I-168 attacks the Yorktown and Haman. 1900 hours. The Enterprise and Hornet recover aircraft and head east. General chronology. Events leading up to and including the Battle of Midway. The 11th of January. The Saratoga torpedoed and damaged by a Japanese submarine, sent to the mainland after temporary repairs at Pearl Harbor. 20th of January. Vice Admiral William Halsey in the Enterprise arrives off Samoa. 23rd of January. The tanker Neches sunk by Japanese submarine. 24th of January. The Yorktown arrives in Pearl Harbor after having escorted Marines to Samoa. 25th of January. The Enterprise and Yorktown begin steaming toward the Gilbert and Marshall Islands. The 31st of January to February 1st. Vice Admiral Halsey in the Enterprise, TF-8, and Rear Admiral Frank J. Fletcher in the Yorktown, TF-17, attack Japanese-held Wedge, Kwajalein, Jalowit, and Mealy Islands. 5th of February. The Enterprise returns to Pearl Harbor. The Yorktown returns on the 6th of February. 7th of February and 9th of February. Admiral Nimitz responds to Admiral King's order to take action with the carrier task forces. King wanted the carriers to take the offensive before Japanese forces, then in the Southwest Pacific, could turn around and head east. He made this clear to Admiral Nimitz on the 9th of February. 14th of February. Enterprise TF-16 leaves Pearl Harbor to attack Wake and Marcus Islands. 24th of February. Enterprise planes attack Wake. 4th of March. Enterprise planes attack Marcus. 10th of March. TF-16, Enterprise, returns to Pearl Harbor. 10th of March. Aircraft from the Lexington and Yorktown attack Lae and Salamaua in New Guinea. 26th of March. The Lexington returns to Pearl Harbor. 8th of April. TF-16, the Enterprise and Hornet, departs from Pearl Harbor on Tokyo raid. 18th of April. U.S. B-25s from TF-16 bomb Tokyo. 25th of April. Tokyo Striking Force, Enterprise and Hornet as TF-16, returns to Pearl Harbor. 30th of April. TF-16 leaves Pearl Harbor for Southwest Pacific. 4th of May. Attack on Japanese forces on Tulagi by aircraft of TF-16. 7th to 8th of May. Battle of the Coral Sea. The Lexington is lost and the Yorktown is damaged. 21st of May. North Pacific Force established under Rear Admiral Robert A. Theobald to defend Alaska. 2nd of June. Task Force 17, the Yorktown, joins Task Force 16, the Enterprise and Hornet, northeast of Midway. 4th to 6th of June. Battle of Midway. The Yorktown is damaged on the 4th of June and torpedoed and fatally damaged on the 6th of June. Introduction by Lieutenant Commander Thomas J. Cutler, USN, retired. The Battle of Midway is arguably the greatest battle in American naval history. It is a classic drama in which the underdog comes off the ropes to score a devastating knockout punch. It abounds with moments of phenomenal courage, inspirational sacrifice, clever deception, and fateful decisions. It has been studied in detail by great naval historians, including Samuel Eliot Morison, Gordon Prang, and Craig Simons, because it is a rich case study full of timeless lessons. It is a story that exemplifies how war brings out the best and the worst of humanity. It is no surprise, then, that the U.S. Navy has chosen this battle, of all the battles it has fought over more than 2 centuries, as the one to commemorate annually, to reflect on it much as the Royal Navy has long celebrated its singular victory at Trafalgar, to draw from it a sense of those special qualities that define the American sailor. It is fitting, too, that the U.S. Naval Institute, whose mission includes the preservation of our naval history, should provide this guide as a means of commemorating, researching, experiencing, and learning about this momentous battle. Within this book, Listeners will find a unique collection of materials, all drawn from the Naval Institute's massive collections of intellectual content. Over the years, since June 1942, the Battle of Midway has been reported, analyzed, and discussed in the pages of Proceedings and Naval History magazines, in Naval Institute press books, and as part of the Institute's ongoing oral history project. These have been collected, entirely or in part, in this useful and entertaining anthology. Part 1 sets the stage for the upcoming battle. Part 2 covers planning and preparations on both sides. Part 3 describes the actual battle, including the first-hand accounts of both Japanese and American participants. Part 4 consists of post-battle events and analysis. Part 5 includes the official battle report. Part 6 focuses on the senior commanders. Part 7 covers one of the most interesting aspects of the battle, the role of code-breaking. And Part 8 concludes with numerous assessments of the battle. 3 appendices round out the coverage with additional materials that provide further insight into the many facets of this important and gripping moment in history. The result is a unique collection that only an organization as unique as the U.S. Naval Institute could provide. From general survey to detailed analysis, this book is a welcome addition to the vast literature on World War II, providing a superb reference collection as well as an aid to those who are searching for materials to enhance the annual commemoration of this awe-inspiring and historically significant battle. Part 1. Midway Anthology. Part 1 contains 4 selections. The first, Akagi, famous Japanese carrier. Chapter 1 is one of the first post-war accounts of the Battle of Midway to summarize the operations of the Kido Butai up to and during the engagement off Midway. Published in 1948, it contains errors of detail that the author could not have known about when he wrote the article. It stands, however, as a succinct summary of events leading up to the battle and of the battle itself. The second selection, Attacking a Continent, Chapter 2, explains how and why the Imperial Japanese Navy, IJN, came to appreciate large-scale carrier strikes and why Japanese carrier pilots were so skilled in 1941 to 1942. The third selection, Time is Everything, Japanese Side, Chapter 3, from Black Shoe Carrier Admiral, puts the reader into the shoes of Admiral Yamamoto and shows why he insisted on a decisive battle with the U.S. Navy's Pacific Fleet. The last selection in Part 1, Midway Island Operation Plan, Chapter 4, drawn from a widely read Japanese account of Midway, presents Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto from a Japanese perspective. As the Royal Navy's official history, War with Japan, noted, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's Kido Butai had, since the 7th of December 1941, operated across one-third of the globe, from Hawaii to Ceylon, conducting effective strikes against ships and shore installations at every important Allied base out of reach of shore-based aircraft. They had destroyed the United States battle fleets and driven the British out of the Indian Ocean. To their credit stood the destruction of thousands of tons of merchantmen, hundreds of Allied aircraft, as well as docks, hangars, and base facilities. All this Admiral Nagumo had accomplished without loss or damage to a single one of his ships. Indeed, he was seldom sighted and never effectively attacked. The Battle of Midway would bring this naval triumph to an abrupt halt. Chapter 1. Akagi, Famous Japanese Carrier, by Walton L. Robinson. Proceedings, May 1948, pages 579 to 595. Few warships of World War II had as brief but spectacular a career as did His Japanese Majesty's ship, Akagi, one of the largest and finest aircraft carriers in Nippon's once proud and formidable Imperial Navy, Teikoku Kaigun, literally, the Empire's national sea army. Throughout the first 6 months of the Pacific War, or, as the Japanese liked to call it, the Greater East Asia War, the Akagi played an unusually prominent role, spearheading nearly all of Japan's more important carrier operations. During this critical period, which ended with our victory at Midway, Akagi participated in operations ranging across 120 degrees of longitude from Hawaii to Ceylon, and thereby demonstrated to the world, and to our Navy in particular, the full potentialities of carrier warfare. Laid down in December 1920 at the Kure Navy Yard as a 42,000-ton battlecruiser, part of Japan's famous 8-4 program, 8 huge battleships and 4 battle cruisers, the Akagi, in conformity with the terms of the Washington Naval Limitation Treaty, was taken in hand in 1923 for conversion into a first-line aircraft carrier, Kokubokan. She was launched in 1925 and commissioned 2 years later, a ship of 36,000 tons standard displacement, 763 feet in length, and capable of at least 28.5 knots speed. Reckoned on a tonnage basis, Akagi was, therefore, somewhat larger than our Lexington and Saratoga, likewise converted from battle-cruiser hulls, but was considerably slower and does not appear to have carried more than 60 planes. Her defensive armament comprised 10 8-inch guns, plus 12 4.7-inch, and numerous smaller anti-aircraft weapons. Originally, 4 of the 8-inch guns were mounted forward in paired turrets, just below the upper flight deck, while the remaining 6 were mounted aft on either side of the main deck and quite close to the waterline. A sister ship, the Amagi, was to have been similarly converted, but her hull received serious damage in the terrible earthquake of September 1, 1923. To replace her, the already launched hull of the 40,600-ton battleship Kaga, due to be scrapped under the naval treaty, was appropriated. Commissioned in 1928, the Kaga displaced 35,000 tons, but her shorter hull, 715 feet, greater beam, 11 feet more than Akagi, and weaker engines, 91,000 horsepower instead of 131,000, gave her a designed speed of only 23 knots, according to pre-war Japanese statements. With her 2 enormous horizontal funnels, about 275 feet long, one on either side, the Kaga presented a most bizarre appearance. In 1935 to 1937, the Akagi and the Kaga underwent very thorough modernizations, emerging as near sisters in appearance. Alterations included the suppression of the lower flight deck, flying off deck, extension forward of the upper flight deck, and removal of the 8-inch gun turrets and the mounting of their rifles aft along the side. The Kaga also lost her monstrous funnels, while both ships received small island superstructures on the port side in the Akagi and on the starboard in the Kaga. It is likely also that the Kaga's speed was raised by several knots, probably to between 28 and 30 knots. In November 1941, these 2 ships comprised Japan's first flying squadron, Car-Div-1. The Akagi, wearing the flag of Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, commanding the 1st Air Fleet, whose assigned mission was the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. 2 other flying squadrons, the 2nd and 5th consisting, respectively, of the 17,500-ton carriers, Hiyu and Soyu, and the new 29,800-ton Shokaku and Zuikaku, were also attached to the striking force, as were the old but modernized 31,000-ton, 28-knot battleships Hiei and Kirishima, the new 12,000-ton heavy cruisers Tone and Chikuma, the old 5,700-ton light cruiser Abukuma, and 9 of the newest and largest destroyers, the 1,900-ton Kagero, Shiranuhi, Urakaze, Isokaze, Tanikaze, Hamakaze, Akigumo, and the 1,850-ton Arare and Kasumi. On November 17th, the striking force departed from Saiki on Kyushu's east coast, where for some weeks the carrier air groups had been undergoing intensive training. 5 days later, the ships anchored in Hitokapu Bay on the bleak Kuril Islands, where they refueled and stood by awaiting orders. These came on the 25th from Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet. And next morning, the ships sortied on their secret mission, the nature of which was known only to Admiral Nagumo and senior members of his staff. A week's slow steaming through the cold, gray mists of the North Pacific brought the force to a position about 800 miles south of the eastern Aleutians. Here, on December 3rd, despite heavy seas, the ships fueled from 5 tankers. Had this difficult operation failed, the carriers would have proceeded without their destroyer screen. On the 4th, the Japanese altered course to 135 degrees. 2 days later, the pilots received their briefing for the attack. Next day, the 7th, Tokyo date, came the anxiously awaited code message, "Climb Mount Niitaka." Promptly, the Akagi hoisted the flag signal, speed 24 knots, course south. Even more inspiring to the Japanese crews was the dramatic appearance at the Akagi's masthead of the huge battle ensign which had flown from Admiral Togo's flagship, Mikasa, at the Battle of Tsushima, and which had been carefully preserved during the intervening 36 years. Dawn of December 8th. December 7th, west longitude date, found the Japanese force 230 miles due north of Pearl Harbor. At 0600 hours, all 6 carriers began launching the first attack wave. Led by Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, commanding the Akagi's air group, this wave totaled 189 aircraft, 54 dive bombers, 50 horizontal bombers, 45 fighters, 40 torpedo planes. These aircraft, which inflicted the major portion of the damage sustained by our warships and grounded planes, were followed an hour and 15 minutes later by a second wave, consisting of 54 high-level and 81 dive bombers, escorted by 36 fighters. One pilot with this second wave reported enthusiastically, "Pearl Harbor in flame and smoke, gasping helplessly." Actually, however, the Japanese did not learn, until it was too late, how badly they had hurt our Pacific fleet. After recovering all save 29 of their planes, the Japanese carriers turned northwest and steamed through heavy seas toward Japan, fueling once from a group of 3 oilers stationed along the retirement course. A planned strike against Midway Island, to have been made on December 11th by the Hiryu and Soyu, was cancelled because of severe weather conditions. But on the 16th, these 2 carriers were detached at sea and, between the 21st and 23rd, made almost continuous strikes against Wake Island. In this operation, the 2nd Flying Squadron was screened by the 8th Cruiser Squadron, Tone and Chikuma, and part of the 17th Destroyer Group, Urakaze and Tanakaze. On December 24th, the Akagi, Kaga, and various screening units arrived at Kure, where they were joined next day by the Shokaku and Zuikaku, which had touched briefly at Saiki. 3 days later, the Hiryu and Soyu, delayed by their Wake Island mission, also reached Kure. Following a brief period of rest and servicing at Kure, the Akagi, Kaga, Shokaku, and Zuikaku sortied from the inland sea on January 9th and, accompanied by the Hiei, Kirishima, Abukuma, and destroyers, proceeded to Truk. 3 days later, the Hiryu and Soyu also left Kure, but headed for Palau instead of the vaunted base in the Central Carolines. 5 days after departure from Kure, The 1st and 5th Flying Squadrons and screening units anchored at Truk, remaining there until January 17th, when they sortied to support the operations in the Bismarck Archipelago. On January 20th, planes from all 4 of the big carriers attacked Rabaul. Next day, the Akagi and Kaga sent their air groups against Kavieng, while planes from the Shokaku and Zuikaku struck airfields at Lai, Salumawa, Madang, and Bulolo. On the 22nd, Akagi and Kaga planes again attacked Rabaul, this time in support of landings which secured the place the next day. Then they headed for Truk, where they arrived on January 27th and were joined 2 days later by the Shokaku and Zuikaku, whose planes on the 25th had bombed the small airfield at Lorengau in the Admiralties. After an overnight stay at Truk, the 5th Flying Squadron left for Palau and Yokosuka. 2 days later, while American carrier planes were attacking the Gilberts and Marshalls, the Akagi and Kaga left Truk for Palau, where they arrived on February 8th to find the main body of Vice Admiral Nobutake Kondo's Second Fleet, which had supported the Malay and Philippine invasions. Also in port were the Hiyu and Soyu, whose planes on January 23rd and 24th had softened up the defenses of the small Dutch naval base on Amboina Island, captured a week later by Japanese landing forces. Within a week of the Akagi's arrival at Palau, the combined forces, under Admiral Nagumo's overall command and totaling 4 battleships, the fast Kongos, 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Hiyu, Soryu, at least 6 cruisers and 15 to 20 destroyers sortied and, after steaming through the Malacca Passage and the Banda Sea, reached a position east of Timor by the morning of February 19th. The carriers then launched their air groups against Port Darwin, wrecking its airfield and shore installations and sinking the old United States destroyer, Peary, and nearly all the Allied transports and supply vessels in the harbor. Japanese losses were 2 planes shot down, a bomber from the Kaga, and a fighter from the Hiyu. 2 days after their Darwin strike, the Japanese carriers anchored in Staring Bay, Kendari, whose seizure had been completed several weeks earlier. 4 days were spent at this improvised base near the southeastern tip of the Celebes. Then, on February 25th, Admiral Nagumo, with his flag still in the Akagi, took the entire force to sea. Skirting Timor's northwest coast, he passed into the Indian Ocean and steamed west to a position south of Java, upon whose northern shores Japanese troops began landing the night of February 28th to March 1st, following the Battle of the Java Sea. On March 1st, the carriers launched strikes against Allied warships and merchantmen fleeing toward Australia. One victim was our oiler Pecos, with the Langley's survivors, which was first sighted at 1600 hours, only 30 miles south-southwest of the Akagi. Battleship, cruiser, and destroyer formations were also active that day, sinking, among other ships, the old United States destroyer Edsel and a large Dutch armed freighter. 2 bombs from the Hiyu or Soyu, the accounts differ, assisted in the destruction of the Edsel, which went down at 19:06 hours after a gallant but hopeless fight against overwhelming odds. Kongo, Haruna, Tone, and Chikuma. At 17:47 hours, these 4 ships had left the main body at 14 degrees 34 minutes south by 106 degrees 51 minutes east to engage the Edsel to the rear, the main body then steaming on a southeasterly course. For the next several days, Admiral Nagumo's powerful force steamed off Java's south coast to intercept Allied ships attempting to reach Australia. But his air groups appear to have been relatively inactive, limiting their efforts to searches which located various Allied ships for his surface units. In this manner our old gunboat Asheville, the 4-stacker Pillsbury, and Britain's Stronghold were intercepted and sunk by Japanese warships. Details are still uncertain, but it seems likely that the Asheville and Pillsbury went down the night of March 2nd to 3rd in separate actions with heavy cruisers.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?